Strange tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Strange Tales from Liao Zhai. Today, I'm going to bring you a story called Meng. Meng, courtesy name woman, which means never fierce, came from an official family in Zhenchang. He was known for his fiery temper from a young age. As a child, if any of the other kids offended him, he wouldn't hesitate to use his fists. Despite the teacher repeatedly admonishing him, Meng couldn't change his ways. His courtesy name, woman, was given by the teacher in a desperate hope that he might learn to be more restrained. By the time he was 16 or 17, Meng had developed impressive martial arts skills, even able to use a long pole to effortlessly leap onto rooftops. He was quick and agile, always eager to fight for justice. Because of this, the people in his neighborhood respected him. Whenever anyone felt wronged, they would come to him for help, and his courtyard was often crowded with people seeking his aid. Meng was always ready to protect the weak and didn't mind making enemies. As long as evildoers dared to oppose him, he would at least beat them with fists and sticks, or at worst, break their bones. When he was truly angry, no one dared to intervene. However, despite his violent nature, Meng was extremely filial to his mother. No matter how angry he was, as soon as his mother spoke, his temper would immediately subside. Whenever his mother scolded him, he would obediently accept his punishment and apologize. But once he left the house, he would forget all about it. Next door to Meng's house lived a harsh woman who would constantly bully her mother-in-law, leaving her to nearly starve. The son, afraid of his wife, would secretly give food to his mother when she was suffering, but if his wife caught him, she would shout and scold him, shaking the entire neighborhood with her fury. When Meng heard this, his anger flared up. He leapt over the wall into the woman's yard and, without saying a word, cut off her nose, ears, lips, and tongue. Blood splattered everywhere, and the woman soon died from the injuries. When his mother heard of this, she was horrified and quickly called over the neighbor's son to calm things down. She even promised the young servant girl to him as a wife to smooth over the situation. However, the entire ordeal left Meng's mother so upset that she refused to eat or drink for a whole day, only shedding tears. Meng was terrified and kneeled on the ground, repeatedly begging his mother to punish him, saying that he knew he had done wrong. But his mother continued to cry, refusing to speak to him. Meng's wife, Zhou, seeing this, also knelt beside her husband, pleading for him. In the end, Meng's mother picked up a stick and beat him fiercely. She then used a needle to carve a cross-shaped mark into his arm and colored it with red dye, ensuring it would never fade so that he would always remember his mistake. Meng didn't say a word and endured the punishment quietly. Only when his mother finally began to eat again did he breathe a sigh of relief. Meng's mother was always kind-hearted and generous, especially when it came to offering food to monks and Taoists. She loved to feed them well, making sure they were always full and never neglected. One day, a Taoist priest came to her door asking for alms, and Meng's mother warmly invited him in and offered him a meal. At that moment, Meng happened to be walking past the Taoist. The Taoist looked up, carefully examining him. His brow furrowed slightly, and with a meaningful tone, he said, "Young man, the aura of misfortune around you is too strong. There's an air of cruelty surrounding you, and I'm afraid it may lead to a bad end. However, you come from a family that accumulates good deeds, so logically, this shouldn't be the case." Meng had just been severely scolded by his mother and was thinking about trying to control his temper. When he heard the Taoist's words, he felt a bit of fear and respect. He quickly responded with politeness. "I know this myself, but every time I see injustice in the world, I can't help but get angry and lose control. If I try hard to change, will I be able to avoid disaster?" The Taoist smiled and said, "Don't ask if you can avoid disaster yet. The real question is whether you can change. You must learn to control yourself. If you truly try to improve, even if there's only a 1 in 1,000 chance, I will find a way to help you avoid misfortune." Meng, who had never believed in ghosts or magic, just smiled faintly and didn't take the words too seriously. The Taoist saw through his thoughts and calmly said, "I knew you wouldn't believe, but what I'm saying isn't magic. If you follow my advice, accumulate good deeds, even if there's no immediate effect, you won't lose anything." Curious, Meng asked, "Then, what should I do, master?" The Taoist pointed outside and said, "Right now, there's a young man standing outside your door. You should form a brotherly bond with him. If a great disaster comes your way, even if it's a death sentence, he'll be able to save your life." Intrigued, Meng followed the Taoist outside. He looked in the direction the Taoist pointed and saw a boy, no more than 12 or 13 years old. The boy was thin and appeared downcast. "That young man's name is Zhao, and he's called Sengu. He comes from Nanchang, but due to a famine in his hometown, he ended up here in Jianchang," the Taoist explained. Meng, taking the Taoist's advice, began to approach Sengu. He invited the boy to his home and set him up with a school, offering him generous pay. At just 12 years old, Sengu was introduced to Meng's mother, and they became sworn brothers. The following spring, Sengea's family decided to return to their home in Nanchang. After that, they lost contact with him. Since the incident with the neighbor woman, Meng's mother had become stricter with him. She no longer allowed people with grievances to come to their door for help. One day, Meng's uncle passed away, and he accompanied his mother to the funeral. On the way, they encountered several people dragging a man along, tying him with ropes, beating and cursing him, urging him to move faster. The street was crowded with onlookers, and the sedan chair carrying Meng's mother could not move forward. Seeing this, Meng went to ask the bystanders what was happening. At that moment, someone who recognized him squeezed through the crowd and began to explain the situation. It turned out that a local squire's son, known as Zhai, had been causing trouble in the village, and no one dared to confront him. One day, Zhai noticed the wife of a man named Li Shen. She was very beautiful, and Zhai, driven by desire, wanted to take her for himself, but he could not find an excuse to do so. So, he instructed his servant to lure Li Shen into gambling, offering him a large sum of money to get him started. He even persuaded Li Shen to use his wife as collateral. Zhai wrote up a contract with Li Shen and gave him even more money, encouraging him to continue gambling. Li Shen gambled all night and lost several thousand coins. A few months later, with the interest piled up, he owed Zhai over 300,000 coins. Unable to repay such a huge sum, Li Shen was forced to watch as Zhai's men took his wife by force. Li Shen begged outside Zhai's house, but Zhai, furious, had him tied to a tree, beaten with a stick, and forced him to sign a no-regrets statement, promising not to back out. Upon hearing this, Meng's anger flared up, nearly overflowing. He quickly jumped on his horse, preparing to take matters into his own hands and teach the bullies a lesson. Just then, his mother poked her head out of the sedan chair and shouted, "Stop! You're going to get yourself into trouble again." Meng felt frustrated but knew he had no choice but to stay by his mother's side. After the funeral, Meng was in a foul mood all day. He remained silent, barely touching his food, sitting there as if brooding. His wife asked him what was wrong, but he didn't respond. That night, he lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep, until the sun came up. The next night, Meng still couldn't sleep. Suddenly, he sat up, walked outside, and then returned to bed. This went on for a while, with him repeatedly leaving and coming back. His wife, seeing this, didn't dare to ask too many questions. She just held her breath and listened quietly to the sounds he made. Finally, Meng left again. This time, when he returned, he shut the door behind him and quickly fell asleep. That very night, Zhai met an untimely death. His body was discovered lying on his bed, his stomach slashed open, intestines spilling out. Li Shen's wife was found dead beneath the bed, her body exposed. The authorities suspected Li Shen was responsible and immediately arrested him. The county magistrate subjected Li Shen to brutal torture, and his ankle bones were beaten until they were exposed, but Li Shen never admitted to the crime. After more than a year of torment, Li Shen finally broke under the pain and falsely confessed to the murder, leading to his sentencing to death. At the same time, Meng's mother passed away. After the funeral, Meng turned to his wife and said, "The person who killed Zhai was actually me. At the time, my mother was still alive, so I couldn't turn myself in. Now that the matter is settled, how can I let others take the blame for my crime? I must go to the authorities and confess." His wife was horrified and hurriedly tried to stop him, but Meng tore away from her grasp, determined to go to the county office and confess. The county officials were shocked and they learned the truth and immediately shackled Meng, sending him to prison. Li Shen, on the other hand, was released. However, Li Shen refused to leave, insisting that he was the one who killed Zhai. The magistrate was now at a loss, unable to determine who the true killer was, and eventually had no choice but to keep both Meng and Li Shen imprisoned. Li Shen's relatives blamed him for seeking his own death, but Li Shen replied, "What Mr. Tsui did was exactly what I had wanted to do all along. Now that he's already done it for me, how could I bear to watch him die for my sake? Even if Mr. Tsui hadn't come forward, would have confessed to killing Zhai, so he wouldn't bear the blame." As time passed, the magistrate finally uncovered the truth and ordered Li Shen's release. He sentenced Meng to death, and the execution was soon to follow. However, at this moment, Zhao, a department official from the Ministry of Justice, arrived in the county on an inspection. When he reviewed the case files, he noticed Meng's name. He immediately dismissed his subordinates and summoned Cui Meng. When Cui Meng looked up to see Zhao, he was stunned to realize that Zhao was none other than that young man, Senggu. Feeling a mix of emotions, Cui Meng told Senggu the whole story, laying out the truth exactly as it happened. After hearing the story, Zhao remained silent for a long time. He then ordered that Cui Meng be returned to the prison for the time being and instructed the guards to take good care of him. Not long after, because Cui Meng had turned himself in, the county officials decided to lighten his punishment. His death sentence was commuted, and he was exiled to Yunnan. Li Shen, out of loyalty, chose to accompany Cui Meng to Yunnan. Within less than a year, Cui Meng was granted amnesty and allowed to return to his hometown, all thanks to Seng Gea's help. Once back home, Cui Meng resumed his life, and Li Shen continued to stay by his side, helping him run his family business. Cui Meng offered Li Shen money, but he always refused. However, Li Shen developed a keen interest in martial arts, climbing rooftops and wielding a staff. Cui Meng treated him very well. Not only did he find a wife for Li Shen, but he also bought land for him. After all the events that had unfolded, Cui Meng had truly reformed. Whenever he touched the tattoo his mother had left on his arm, he couldn't help but shed tears. If there was any injustice in the village, Li Shen would resolve it in Cui Meng's name but never told him about it. One day, a scholar named Wang came to seek help. Wang's family was quite wealthy, but they had taken in many unruly, immoral people who frequented their house. These people often carried out robberies at other rich households, terrorizing the surrounding area. If someone accidentally offended them, they would collude with nearby bandits, stage it as a robbery, and have the person killed in the wilderness. Wang's son was equally brutal and corrupt. Wang had a widowed aunt who had been living alone for years, and she was involved with both Wang and his son. Wang's wife, Qiu, was a virtuous woman who had tried many times to persuade her husband to change, but in the end, she was cruelly strangled to death. Qiu's brother reported the case to the authorities, but Wang bribed the magistrate heavily and had Qiu's brother falsely accused of slander. With no other recourse, Qiu's brother came to Cui Meng for help. However, Li Shen turned them away, refusing to help and telling them to leave. A few days later, a guest arrived at the Cui household. The servant was out running errands, so Cui Meng asked Li Shen to prepare tea for the guest. Li Shen walked into the room and, without speaking, complained to the guest. "It's true that I'm friends with Cui Meng. We've even been together, exiled to Yunnan for a time. We've shared a deep bond. But to this day, he's never paid me any wages, and now he orders me around like a servant. I can't take it anymore." With that, Li Shen stormed out of the Cui household. Cui Meng was somewhat surprised by Li Shen's attitude, but he didn't say anything about it. However, not long after, Li Shen accused Cui Meng at the local county office, claiming that for the past 3 years, Cui had never paid him a single cent in wages. When Cui Meng heard about this, he was even more confused and decided to go to the county office personally to confront Li Shen. The two ended up arguing loudly in the courthouse. The magistrate, seeing Li Shen's unreasonable behavior, scolded him and had him thrown out of the court. A few days later, under the cover of night, Li Shen snuck into Wang's household and killed Wang, his son, his aunt, and everyone else in the family. He also left a note on the wall with his own name written on it. By the time the officials arrived, Li Shen had already vanished without a trace. Wang's family suspected that Sui Meng had secretly ordered the killings, but the officials didn't believe it, considering what had happened a few days earlier. It was then that Sui Meng realized that Li Shen had accused him because he was afraid that the murder would end up implicating him. The authorities immediately issued a warrant for Li Shen's arrest across nearby counties, but before long, the rebel leader Li Zicheng launched an uprising and broke into Beijing. The search for Li Shen had to be put on hold. After the fall of the Ming dynasty, Li Shen returned to his hometown with his family and continued to live with Sui Meng. Their friendship remained strong, just like before. However, the country was in chaos, with bandits running rampant. Wang's nephew, Wang Diren, gathered the remaining ruffians from Wang's household and started to form a band of thieves, occupying the mountains as their base. They frequently raided nearby villages, burning, killing, and committing all sorts of atrocities. One night, these bandits set out once again, claiming they were going to avenge Wang's death. They arrived at Sui Meng's house. By coincidence, Sui Meng was away, but when the bandits broke in, Li Shen quickly realized what was happening. He hurriedly climbed over the wall to escape and hid in the shadows, observing them. Unable to find Sui Meng or Li Shen, the bandits took Sui Meng's wife and all the family's wealth. When Li Shen returned home, he found that only one servant remained. Furious, he grabbed a rope, cut it into several dozen pieces, short ones for the servant and longer ones for himself. Li Shen planned to take action with the servant. He told the servant to climb to the half-slope behind the bandit camp, light the pieces of rope on fire and scatter them, hanging them on the thorns before quickly returning. The servant followed the plan. Li Shen saw that the bandits all had red sashes tied around their waists and red silk ribbons wrapped around their hats. He decided to mimic their appearance and dressed up like a bandit himself. At home, there was also a mare that had just given birth to a foal, which the bandits had left abandoned outside the door. Li Shen tied the foal to a post and rode the mare, heading straight for the bandits' hideout. The bandits' hideout was in a large village. Li Shen tied the mare outside the village and quietly scaled the wall to sneak inside. The village was in chaos. The bandits seemed to have just returned, their weapons still in hand. Li Shen blended in with them and waited for the right moment to gather information. He soon learned that Sui Meng's wife was being held at Wang Diren's house. After a while, he heard the bandits giving orders for everyone to return to their rooms to rest. The bandits shouted their agreement, but suddenly one of them ran in, reporting that there were flames on the east mountain. All the bandits turned their eyes eastward. At first, the fire was only a few small spots, but soon more and more flames appeared, looking like stars in the sky. Li Shen loudly shouted, "There are enemies on the east mountain." Wang Diren was startled and immediately led the bandits toward the mountain. Seizing the opportunity, Li Shen slipped away from behind and turned to head for Wang Diren's house. Inside, two bandits were guarding Sui Meng's wife. Li Shen tricked them by saying, "The leader forgot his dagger." The two bandits hurriedly ran off to search for it. Taking advantage of the moment, Li Shen struck one of them with his sword, and the other turned around in a panic, only to be cut down as well. Then, Li Shen carried Sui Meng's wife on his back and leaped over the wall. He made his way to the village entrance, untied the horses' reins, and handed them to Zhai Meng's wife. "Madam, you don't know the way home, but this mare does. Just loosen the reins, and it will take you there on its own." The mare, eager to reunite with her foal, quickly headed toward Zhai's house, and Li Shen followed right behind. Once they were out of the mountain pass, Li Shen set fire to the ropes he had brought, hanging them on thorns, and then he returned to Zhai's house. The next day, when Zhai Meng came home and heard that his house had been robbed, he was enraged and nearly lost control of his temper. He felt deeply humiliated and swore to wipe out the bandits' hideout. Li Shen hurried to stop him and suggested gathering the villagers to discuss a strategy. However, the villagers were all too frightened of the bandits and didn't dare to help. After much persuasion, only about 20 people were willing to join, but they didn't have any proper weapons to fight with. By chance, Li Shen had captured 2 spies from the bandit den. Zhai Meng initially wanted to kill them, but Li Shen disagreed. He ordered the 20 villagers to line up with white wooden sticks, and in front of everyone, he had the 2 spies' ears cut off before letting them go. The villagers grumbled. "There are only a few of us, and we're already afraid the bandits know our secrets. If they return to their den, they'll surely reveal everything about us. If they come for us all at once, our whole village is doomed." But Li Shen replied, "That's exactly what I want them to do." Next, Li Shen ordered the family that had been hiding the spies to be executed. Afterward, he sent 4 men to nearby areas to borrow weapons. The villagers came through, not only bringing bows and arrows and firearms but also 2 large cannons. Once night fell, Li Shen led the group to a narrow pass, placing the cannons on the main road leading into the village, and arranged for 2 soldiers to hide the fire-starting materials, ready to fire at any moment. Then, Li Shen and his men went to the east side of the valley, chopped down a few big trees, and placed them along the cliffs. Li Shen and Zhai Meng then split their forces, each leading a group to hide on opposite sides of the valley. After the first watch of the night, the sound of horses' hooves echoed from a distance. Sure enough, a large group of bandits rode in, their numbers stretching far and wide. When all the bandits had entered the valley, Li Shen immediately ordered the trees they had chopped down to be pushed down, blocking the bandits' retreat. The cannons fired, and the villagers' battle cries shook the entire valley. The bandits hastily began to retreat, but the narrowness of the valley caused them to become tangled and disorganized, unable to escape. At that moment, Li Shen's men fired arrows and guns at once. The bandits, caught off guard, were struck down, falling left and right, their bodies scattered across the valley. The remaining 20 or so bandits saw they were losing and quickly kneeled, begging for mercy. Li Shen ordered them to be tied up and taken back. Afterward, they pressed on and attacked the bandit hideout. When the few bandits guarding the den learned what was happening, they scattered in all directions. Li Shen and his men took advantage of the situation, seizing the weapons and supplies in the den, and returned victorious. Zhai Meng was overjoyed and asked how Li Shen had set up the fire ropes to rescue his wife. Li Shen replied, "I had the servant start the fire to the east, drawing the bandits' attention away. Since the fire ropes were short, the fire would soon go out. This way, the bandits wouldn't be able to spot that there was no one on the mountain in the dark. I lit the long fire ropes at the mouth of the valley because it was narrow, and I could hold it alone. When the bandits came in the dark and saw all the firelight, they would naturally be scared. But all of this was just a temporary measure I came up with because I was alone and weak at the time. Later, Li Shen learned from the captured bandits that the bandits indeed fled because they were frightened by the sight of the firelight. Li Shen and Sui Meng then released the 20-odd captives after cutting off their ears and noses. From then on, their reputation spread far and wide. Villagers and those seeking refuge came to join them. Soon, their village formed a local militia of more than 300 people. The surrounding bandits and robbers no longer dared to enter the area, and the entire region was finally restored to peace. At the end of the story, the author left a comment. He said, "A bull that pulls the cart at lightning speed will inevitably break the cart, but this also means that this bull will stand proudly among the herd." This saying is most fitting to describe Sui Meng. His character was strong and righteous, and few could match him. Yet, his anger at the injustices of the world, doesn't it carry more idealism than those who are so-called wise and concerned with the greater good? As for Li Shen, he started as an ordinary commoner, but in the end, he earned a great reputation with his wisdom and courage. Not only was he able to cleverly infiltrate the enemy's lair and eliminate hidden threats, but at a critical moment, he also cut off the enemy's retreat and wiped out the bandits in one stroke. If he were given a great banner to wield and serve the country, who could prevent him from becoming a king? Alright. That's all for today's strange tale, Sui Meng. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Feel free to leave your comments and share with others. See you again in the next issue.